Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today I'm excited. We have John Golden with us. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm the Chief Marketing Strategy Officer with Pipeliner CRM, obviously a CRM system. I'm also the host of SalesPop, which is our online digital magazine and podcast. And I do a lot of writing, speaking, and obviously I do a lot of podcasting and interviews, but that's basically me.
I love it. So let's talk about the journey. So my visionary people, I love them because there's no such thing as a standard journey. But where did you start in your career and how did you end up where you are today?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I agree. I think life is fantastic. How meandering the paths can be, and if you're open to exploring opportunities, it can take you many interesting places. My career really kind of started or really took off back in Dublin in Ireland. When I joined this in the 90s, I joined this small startup company that was doing computer-based training. And then within a year or two, they'd opened up a sales and marketing operation in Silicon Valley down in Menlo Park. And I was working in the product development center, and I was coming over to support salespeople on breakfast seminars and customer calls and all that kind of good stuff. And eventually they invited me to move over. So I moved to Silicon Valley in the mid 90s or so, and came in during the dot-com era, and that was just a phenomenal introduction to the business cycles, particularly of the US, and the exuberance and how everything was so fantastic, and then overnight it wasn't. And then but it was a great introduction for me, because early on I really took on board that lesson that as business changes, as business fundamentals change, as market shift, as innovation comes in, there are still fundamental things that endure. So back in the dot-com, it was like, oh, who cares about the business plans and like profitability and all that kind of stuff? That's nonsense. Until, of course, it's not nonsense. And eventually it all came back to bite everybody. So I think one of the great lessons I learned early on, Jeff, was with innovation, you always have to be careful that you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that you're making sure that the things that still work, that still endure, that are still true, you carry them forward, and you just don't go, none of that matters anymore. This is the new world, because, the new world is always built on at least part of the old world.
Yeah.
And from there, I was fortunate enough to get many other opportunities. I worked at a K-12 startup on the East Coast. I ran two consulting companies for a parent company, Informa PLC. I ran Huthwaite, which was spin selling, and was the CEO of that business, consulting on sales globally, and then Omega Performance, which is credit training. And then when they had been sold to a private equity group, I started my own management consultancy. And as these things tend to go, one of my first clients was the founder of Pipeliner, and we did a few projects with him, and then he just said, come on board, help me on this journey, forget doing that stuff. And so I said, okay. He was very persuasive, so I came on board. And he was very persuasive because he actually reached out to me originally, because in the book I had written about winning the battle for sales when I was at Huthwaite, I had a chapter about CRM where it was David and Goliath was the analogy. And basically, the story of David, he was given the latest, greatest armor and weapons, and was like, couldn't move.
Yeah.
And basically said, no, forget all this, and went out with this trusty sling, boom, giant down. And I kind of compared that to CRM at the time. I said, CRM can be overburdensome on salespeople. Most salespeople hate it and all of that. So he actually called me because of that chapter and said, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you a CRM that actually salespeople will like to use. And that's how I ended up a Pipeliner, because indeed he did. And we've been building this and bringing it to market ever since.
I love that story because I have a background in sales, and quite bluntly, most CRMs were something done to me, not for me. And it was like, I actually worked one job. We were required. We had to use the mega colossal 800-pound gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
There was 30 different places you had to go to check things, and we were mandated. We were fully commissioned. We were required to spend 4 hours a day maintaining the database.
Yeah.
And every time I got my data, because I'm OCD, so I'd go through it and I'd clean it. And then my boss would go buy some shitty lists, pardon the language, but he'd buy these crappy lists, dump it in without telling us. And then all my hot prospects were like, where'd they go? And, oh, we deleted that report because we created this report. And not to rant, but it was all of the development, all of the implementation was done by a dev team in India that had never worked a day in sales in their life.
Yeah.
And I was like, stop it.
and that's the problem. That's always been the problem, Jeff, is that CRMs were built from a command and control perspective.
Yeah.
And what was never taken into account was the burden on the salesperson. And what wasn't really taken into account with legacy CRM was the benefit to the salesperson. It was all, and unfortunately management, were sold this idea of, oh yeah, you put in the CRM, you get all these beautiful reports, you'll have so much transparency and predictability and all of this, which is great in theory. But when you then dump all the data entry onto the salespeople, then those reports and those predictions and those forecasts all go out the window because, as you said, it becomes a burden. People don't do it properly, and so we wanted to turn that on its head and say, okay, for a salesperson, what is important for a salesperson, and that's to get insight into their prospect or customer, to be able to see all the information in one place quickly, to be able to get insights, and for the system to actually focus you on what's of most importance to you. Then make it easy, make it visual, because salespeople are visual people. And now, obviously, with the advent of AI, we have incorporated a lot of AI into the system as well, but in a supportive way, because at the end of the day, we believe, Jeff, is that salespeople want to be creative and they want to build relationships, and that's where they do their best work, is when they're creating value, they're being creative, they're building relationships. So the technology and AI can take away all of that other stuff. We have automation built in, so all of the road routine, the data entry, all of that stuff, you take that away from the salesperson, and then what you give them instead is insight and focus.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. Again, I'll just share my big CRM experience. We didn't have a mobile app, so we literally, and we were meant to be out in the field. We were expected to find a hotspot, log into our laptops securely, and then update the CRM. And it was like, I could either be closing deals or updating the CRM. And
I have to say, Jeff, back in the day, that was when I was at other companies and running companies and using, shall we say, that same 800-pound gorilla, that's his name we won't mention. But if I had $1 for every time a salesperson said that to me, said, listen, do you want me to do data entry in the CRM or do you want me to sell?
Yeah.
And I would be like, well, I'd like you to do both. And they were like, well, there's not enough hours in the day. So I think it's unfortunate that that has been the majority experience for salespeople, has been that CRM has been extremely burdensome and low value to them. And that's what we've been working hard to turn on its head, because it's not just because at the end of the day, Jeff, we see sales people as such an important and pivotal role. And it's one that has been, let's face it, hasn't been treated kindly by popular culture. It hasn't been treated kindly by people's perceptions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody, if you had a kid and they brought home a prospective, spouse, right, and they said 3 of them, and they said, well, this one's a lawyer, this one's a doctor, and this one's a salesperson. You'd be like, well, you can get rid of that person, right? Let's talk to these other 2.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that the salesperson may actually be smarter and more successful than the other 2 put together.
Yeah. It's funny. A friend of mine, he's a sales trainer. and he actually is successful, and he teaches other people how to replicate it. And for years, his mom told people that he was unemployed because she didn't want to admit he was in sales.
Yeah, and it's and that's the crazy thing about it, because at the end of the day, is sales is the tip of the spear, and what are salespeople doing is they're finding people who have a need or an opportunity, and they're looking to help them, and they're looking to be that conduit to bring a product or service to them if it's the right fit, and to help them to help them with the experiences they've had working with other customers to bring value. It's such a fantastic role. And at the end of the day, if you look at it on a macro scale, like what is sales? It's trade. And look at when countries trade fairly and have good relationships, they're not likely to be in conflict, right? When there are issues there, well, then conflicts arise. So the importance of sales and of trade and of win-win situations is not just for business, it's for society at large.
Yeah. And I think that's, I had the fortune of, I had a mentor who firmly believed that sales is the greatest act of service. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not, I have a thing and I want to sell a thing to you. It's, I know you have a problem, I'm going to help you solve it.
Yeah.
Oh, my product happens to do that. Great.
Yeah, and if my product doesn't happen to do that, I will tell you that, and I will refer you to maybe one or two that will. And I think that whole and like I said, I mean, it's such a great role, because you get to help solve problems, you get to maybe broker in other people, you get to do a lot of relationship building, but you can't do that if you're burdened by low value activities. And as I said, that's why we have built that into the CRM, to get rid of all of that stuff, to allow you to be, and because at the end of the day, I think, the most successful salespeople going forward will be the ones who really know how to leverage a technology like that, and then to create the space and time for them to be the best version of themselves when they're building relationships and creating value.
And honestly, I think that's what people miss when it comes to AI is it gets rid of the mundane, so you've got time for the important. And I know a lot of people, they want to go with, there's a couple of other commercial products that blend marketing with CRM. And it's like, oh, I don't have to talk to anybody anymore. It's like, no, that's not the point either.
No, that's not that. Absolutely. And I think you're right. I mean, and one of the things that has happened, obviously, is, we had this whole inbound movement, if you like. It started 10, 15 years ago, and it was all about you put out content and you get inbound and all of that, and it did kind of lull people into this, and I think it caught a lot of salespeople to lull them into this idea that I don't have to do anything anymore, as you said. I just sit back and wait for qualified leads. But as we know, that doesn't work. You have to do lots of things, but you also, at the end of the day, you want to build a relationship from the beginning. You want to be creating value at the beginning. You want to be setting the foundation for not just to win a deal, but to gain a customer, somebody who eventually, hopefully, will turn into a testimonial, an advocate, somebody who's going to be a raving fan of what you do. So you got to think long term.
Yeah. And it's funny. My best referrals were people who came to me. I analyzed their problem, and I said, look, legitimately, you need to go talk to one of my competitors because they can handle this better than me. Mm-hmm. And my boss used to get so offended. He's like, you should have closed them. Where's your closing spirit? And I'm like, I got to look these people in the eye next time I see them. So if I close them and they cancel, that doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah. And it just sends your churn rates up, and if you're looking at a healthy business, obviously renewals and low churn rate are something that are key. So if you're grabbing deals that don't fit, and you're shoehorning people in, or you're fudging on things, it might be great for the short term, but it's going to come back to bite you. And you're unlikely that person is ever going to renew and ever going to recommend you. And worse, may even do the opposite and say, oh, yeah, well, I got burnt by them because they promised me all of this and it didn't work.
Yeah, you end up with so much negative talk. It's not worth it. Now, what makes, okay, so we talked a little bit about Pipeliner. What are you hearing? What are your salespeople saying? Because again, when the 800-pound gorilla came along, I was like, oh God, please just, I legitimately, I was top of my group and I quit because I couldn't stand the database admin. I was like, you hired me to go talk to people and you want me to sit in my house and update the database. So where's Pipeliner? What are you getting for feedback on it that makes it really stand out to your users?
Yeah, it's the same as what I was talking about, is the fact that, it's built for them. We give all the tools to them. It's visual. It's easy to understand. You can learn it really quickly. And one of the things that we did that's kind of revolutionary, Jeff, is that we decided to make the admin, the back end, right, just as intuitive as the front end. Because as you know from your experience with other CRMs, like, what do you end up doing? You end up with having to hire admins, they have to get certified, they go off and, oh, there's a new certification, I need to get certified again. And you got to pay for the certification. And then they come back and they say, well, I've got another certification, I need a pay increase, right? So, yeah. And then if you only have one of those people, then they have you as a hostage. So then you have a second person. So before you know it, you have this massive overhead and expense on the administration side. But the most important thing is, you say you're the sales manager or whatever, is you have to go to them to ask for things, right? They are not salespeople. They're not in the business every day, so they don't understand. So my experience in the past was a lot of stuff lost in translation. Can you get me this report? Yeah, they come back 2 weeks later. Here's the report. No, that's not exactly what I was looking for, so on and so forth. So we made the back end just as intuitive, drag and drop, easy to learn and understand, so that people who are working in the business could actually do the administration. And so they're from the get-go, like build the sales process, all of this stuff, but it be done by the people who knew what they were doing, not people who were getting it secondhand. And that's been a huge benefit, and something that customers really, really appreciate, because now they don't have to hire expensive admins. They're not paying for certifications and all of that, but they're having the system administrated by the same people who are using it and who it's actually designed for.
And I think back in the day, I can't remember, I want to say Perl reports or SQL, I can't remember which, but you literally had to code reports.
Crystal reports.
Yes, Crystal reports. But we get these reports delivered and we'd be like, who asked for this? Like, and worse, it was, what do we do with this? And I called him my micromanager. He got really offended by that. But, it's like, if the shoe fits, wear it. He'd be like, well, I need that to see, something about line of sight into blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it feels like you want to look over my shoulder. It's like, let's agree. This is my quota. This is how I get to my quota. Get out of my way and let me move. Yeah.
And one of the and another kind of innovations that we've been bringing into it is, like, we're a big believer in AI agents, right? And I personally, I believe that the whole agentic AI is just going to change how we interact with technology going forward. I think the days of learning clicks and this and that or whatever are going to be behind us, because we're just going to want to speak to it. We're just going to want to type into the agent or speak to it and say. So we've brought a lot of agents in, like, and one that's what you were just talking about there in terms of reporting. We have a really powerful reporting engine, but you need to know what you're doing in order to unlock it. So one of the first things we did was we created an AI agent to where now you literally can type in or use the voice and say, create me a report with blah, blah, blah parameters or whatever, and then let the AI and the system create it for you. So we're trying to take away as much overhead as possible and reduce the learning curve. We have the same thing, we have online forms, things like that, where we have agents where you can literally just type in and or say exactly how you want the form to perform, what you want it to do, etc., and it'll create it. So that's where I think it's going to become even the adoption rates and the learning curve. The adoption rates are going to go up, learning curve is going to go down. um, because as we were saying, it's like we're getting away from that stuff that's low value. At the end of the day, it's not great value for you to spend your time learning drop downs and clicks and
Yeah.
all of that. You want to be able to interact with the system. You want the system to give you what you need so that you can get back to talking to people.
Yeah. And again, it shouldn't feel painful or
No.
onerous. So now let's transition slightly. You mentioned at the start that you do a lot of speaking. What are your favorite topics right now? What are you super nerding out about or excited about in terms of either CRM, AI, or just in general? What does John love to speak at conferences about?
Yeah. What I like to speak a lot about today is about being the best version of yourself and putting your best foot forward. Particularly in this crazy world we live in. But things like how you start your day. If you have an important day coming up, if you've got important sales calls or meetings or whatever, it doesn't matter your role. What are you doing when you start your day? Are you starting your day with your phone, looking at social media and the news? Because let's face it, then regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, news is there to provoke a reaction. It's not there to inform you.
Yeah.
So think about it. Start your day with stuff that annoys the heck out of you. Look on social media. Look, Jeff has got a yacht. How did Jeff get a yacht?
Where's
Like,
my
oh, my
yacht?
life sucks. I'm useless. Blah, blah, blah. So, and it turns out it wasn't your yacht anyway. But I don't know that. But my point being is that there's so little we have control over, but there are things that we have control over that we don't take control of. And certainly how you start your day is one of those things. So if you have an important day, you should say to yourself, stop this, like put aside all of that stuff. I don't need it. I need to be in the most positive frame of mind going forward. So I talk a lot about those kind of things, like about leaving baggage behind when you go into meetings. And we're very good at carrying baggage, with us. um, and um, and also about your own digital presence, right? I mean, how when people look at you, if you're, once upon a time they just did a Google search on you, and sure, I mean, I remember way back talking to salespeople saying, you better start looking at your profile about what's online about you. And they were like, well, why? I was saying, because people are going to search you. No, they're going to search the company. No, they're going to search you.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, years later, that's accepted. But now, in the age of AI, here's an additional little wrinkle to throw in here is AI. If somebody does an AI search for you, like somebody goes into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Grok or whatever of those, and searches you, now it's not just pulling up a bunch of links.
Yeah.
It's actually, because they interpret things. So now it's bringing you back. They've looked at all your presence, and now they come back with an impression of what you're like. So I say to people, you better make sure that that's the impression you want. So you've got to really manage your online presence right now, and you've got to go and look at what it's saying about you, look at what AI is saying about you. And so I spend a lot of time talking about these kind of simple things that you can do in order to put your best foot forward in the world. Be consistent. I mean, there's another, don't be a chameleon. Chameleons are great, creatures,
Yeah.
super fun to look at. Human chameleons are the worst, right? We
Yeah.
can't stand that. And chameleon salespeople are the worst of all, right? Where somebody's fantastic during the sale, and then once they've done the deal, you can't, they hide. You can't find them anymore.
Yeah.
Or they push you off. So I would say about, consistency, putting your best foot forward, putting yourself in the best position possible, really understanding how you show up in the world. So those are the things that I like to talk about.
Love it. And I think that's, it fascinates me when people, even today, are not thinking about all of the ways they show up. And, I'll share something from my early days that I really found frustrating was I had a mentor who kept saying you have to let go of the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't understand. I was like, if I don't care about the outcome, why am I there?
Yeah.
He's like, no. It's not caring about it. It's just you need to be okay if the deal closes or not. And that energy it escaped me for a while. But once I got there, it was genuinely I'm here to serve. And if the best use of our time is we go together forward as a client, great. But if not, I'm equally okay saying thank you for your time. Have a nice day. And again, I got a lot of referrals from people who we agreed weren't a fit. And they said, well, how about this person?
Yeah, it is interesting when you detach yourself, emotionally a little bit from the outcome or I mean, I spoke to some guy, I interviewed some guy a couple of years back, and I thought it was really interesting that he had this routine of where he would reward himself, right? But he would say, okay, I'm going to make, 50 calls today, and if I land, 5 meetings, I'm going to reward myself tonight with some takeout food and a movie or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, but also, if he concluded the day, didn't get those four meetings, but did everything, but could honestly look himself in the eye and say, I did everything I possibly could today, he'd maybe say, okay, I'm not going to have fast food and vinegar, but I'll have some ice cream because I've done everything. But the point is, like, continuing to be honest with yourself and hold yourself accountable, but also realize that things, especially in a job like that, it's not always going to work out. You're going to hear a lot more no's than you ever hear yeses. So you have to find some way of being able to deal with that, and that's tough.
And it's funny. My wife and I recently watched Ted Lasso, and it was a great lesson because he talks about being a goldfish, and I think that's when you see salespeople, they'll either be on a winning streak or a losing streak. And I think that's the problem, is you bring yesterday's baggage into today's meetings.
Yeah. And it's funny you say Ted Lasso because obviously, fictional football manager, soccer, as they say here. But it is, you see that all the time. Is like, you'll see a goal scorer, right? And they're on a tear, and like if they miss hit the ball, it flies into the net. So, they're just on a tear. And then they go into a slump, and it's the same, but it's the opposite. Like, they can't score for love nor money.
Yeah.
Right? And
deeper and deeper into the rut.
Deeper and deeper into the rut. And that's why I always say that at that point, you have to, and this is what they do in sports too, is you got to go back and say, okay, what was I doing when I was scoring goals that I'm not doing right now? What was I doing when I was landing deals that I'm not doing right now? And I guarantee you 99% of the time you go back, you'll see you've maybe started to skip some fundamental steps. Maybe you're taking some shortcuts. Maybe you're being a little complacent. And suddenly when you go back to the fund, like the goal scorer, suddenly you're making the extra runs, you're putting yourself in the box more. Then what happens? The ball hits you on the backside and flies into the net. You've got a goal, and then you go on a tear again. And I think it's the same thing for salespeople, is when you are in a rut, is the first thing to do is go back and look at, you were successful in the past. What were you doing? And are you doing absolutely everything the same right now? And if you're not, then there's your answer.
Well, it's funny because one of my favorite coaching quotes is Vince Lombardi, and he says, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And that's the thing. The rock stars know what the fundamentals are, and they do it. The mediocre, they're like, yeah, I don't need that practice.
Yeah.
And the terrible ones, they don't even know what the fundamentals are.
Know what the ball is.
It's like, which way am I kicking?
Yeah.
Can I throw it? No, you can't.
Yeah.
Now
By the way, just on that note, just on sports people, the late Kobe Bryant, right? I mean, apparently he used to be the first. Well, he used to be in at 5 o'clock in the morning or something crazy, and practicing. And you'd assume like, oh, he's practicing trick shots and fancy stuff. No, he was practicing high school drills. Yeah, because he knew that he knew to do all the good stuff, you got to have the fundamentals.
Yeah, and it's funny. My son years ago was in junior high basketball, and one of the kids was like, no, we want to work on our jump shots. And the coach, he didn't mean it, but he just said, you got to learn how to sink a basket before you can do a jump shot. And the kid just deflated, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. He meant to say we need to work on the fundamentals.
Yeah.
It came across as, you're aiming a little high there, buddy. Now, I'm a believer, and you touched on this, and I want to actually underline it because I think it's critical. I'm a big believer, especially in sales and honestly, in most areas of life, the activities done consistently produce the outcome. And you mentioned going for ice cream to celebrate that you did the activities. I think that's a fundamental idea, because most people judge their day based on the outcome, which you and I don't control. We can't go in and say, well, this person's going to say yes. We don't know what they had for breakfast. We don't know if they had a fight with their spouse, their kids, whatever. But I'm a big fan, and I want your opinion on this. I believe that every role in a company, we have at most 5 things that if we do the same 5 things every day we will succeed inevitably.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think that, and I'm a huge believer in focus as well, right? That's when I had my own company, I called it Focused Revenue Results, because I feel like focus is, it's so critical that you identify what those things are. If it's 5 things, what those 5 things are, and you say, these are the critical things that I need to get done today, and I'm not going to allow myself get distracted by things that aren't of the same value. So I think it's critical. And if you think about it, Jeff, what they say now, so if I come up to you and say, have you got a minute, Jeff? And you say, sure. I ask you a question, you answer it, right?
Yeah.
That actually isn't a minute, because statistically it takes you something like 23 minutes to get back on task, right? So that minute cost you 23 minutes. And it may actually cost you more, because you may just go off on a tangent then, and suddenly I've wrecked your day. Because it's very easy for us to lose focus. But I think if you can identify what are those levers that are the most important ones for you to pull every day, and you focus on those, and you say those are non-negotiables, and I'll fit everything else around that. Yeah, I absolutely believe that's the key to success. Consistency.
And I think that's, again, when you see somebody who's flailing, and sometimes that's a sign, God's saying, go do something else. You weren't cut for this. But almost always it's the premature belief that they've got the fundamentals. And it's like, trust me, you're not quite ready yet.
And you can lose, you can regress too. That's the thing, is like you can be on your grade and you start ignoring the fundamentals, and you start regressing. You become too confident, too complacent. I don't need to do that. I think there's always one key. I think, Jeff, is if you look at the salespeople whose preparation for a meeting is sacrosanct to them, right? It's on their calendar. It's a non-negotiable. They do that. Those are people who are likely successful. The other people you say, I see you've got some sales calls on your calendar. Where's the prep? I do it before the call. When do you do it before the call? Because look, there's only a 10-minute gap here between these two. So how do you do? I know about the and I know about them. You do, so you know exactly what you're going to talk. The outcome you're looking for. The backup outcome. You're whatever, and so do no, you're winging it. You're winging it, and now you're winging it, and then you're surprised that it's not working.
I cringe, because the whole concept of winging it, I am not that guy. And, it's, I can pivot and adapt on my feet, but I always want to go in with plan A, plan B, and maybe a plan C. And I think a lot of people misunderstand the effort. They think, oh, that's a waste of energy. But the reality is, if I can close 1%, 2%, 3% better today than I did yesterday, and then I can keep compounding that, by the end of the year, if I'm just 1% better every day, I've almost, I don't even know the number, I think it's 30 some times my output now. Probably not realistic, but at some point, the more you do the prep work, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, and think about it. If you go into a call with or a meeting with just one outcome in mind, right? If you don't get that outcome, what happens then? Are you deflated? What do you do? Are you scrambling or whatever? If you go and say, well, okay, here's in my prep, here's the desired outcome. That doesn't work out. Here's the next best one I can look for. And if everything goes south, then here's the third one that at least I can salvage something for it. That way you're not surprised. That way you can pivot in the meeting or whatever.
Yeah.
Because how often have you seen that, Jeff, where the salesperson becomes a little desperate at the end because you're not giving them the outcome that they wanted,
Yeah.
and they keep coming back to try and get it instead of reading it and say, okay, I'm not getting that today. Let me fall back to the next best.
Yeah. Moving on. Let's go do something else because this is not working. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's, again, I would never want to be in a position where 100% of my outcome is dependent on one shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I'm not Kobe Bryant. I'm not Shaquille O'Neal. I want to know that there's a rebound.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, and I think that's just an important thing. I think for people just to remember, we're all guilty of it at times. As we get older, as we get more experience, we're all guilty of sometimes winging it, sometimes just saying, I have this, I don't need to do that. But if you do that, if those habits start to become common for you, you'll eventually start to see the negative impact.
Yeah. And you'll start to see your numbers drop. It's
absolutely
not a surprise.
Exactly.
And I think that's one thing that rookies miss is that the senior people, the experienced ones, they know they're not doing something and they've got a justification for it. Whereas the rookies just, I want to get to the deal. I want to close the deal. Yeah. It's like, you can't skip the fundamentals.
You can't skip over. And at the end of the day, I mean, you're not working on your timeline. You're working on the customer or the prospect's timeline. It's not, at the end of the day, really matter what your motivations are. It matters what theirs are.
Yep. Now, we're almost out of time, and I want to be mindful of your time. Let's talk about your podcast for a minute. Who are you looking for as guests, and who is your audience for the podcast?
Yeah, the audience has grown and it's been quite eclectic over the years. It was just sales, but now it's sales leaders, salespeople, entrepreneurs, marketing folks. So generally, like anybody who's interested in business. That's really it. And particularly, like, we do keep a good focus on sales, but I mean, we do a lot of other subjects. We even gone into things like mental health in the past. So yeah, always interested in guests who have interesting insights and things to offer. I like people who got practical insights to offer. So, particularly around sales, around marketing, around, business development in general.
I love it. And last question, and then an open one. Where can people go to connect with you, learn more, maybe explore Pipeliner? What's the next step in their journey with you?
Yeah, so I would encourage you to go to pipelinersales.com to check out the CRM. You can find me on LinkedIn, John Golden, easy to find. Salespop.net or the Salespop YouTube channel for content. So those are the main places.
Awesome. Now, I could have asked you a lot of questions. We focused on things. Is there anything you'd like to add at the end that I haven't asked you about yet?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered quite a lot today. I mean, I could always come up with things, but I think we covered a lot.
That is the perfect answer. Sorry, I didn't prep you on that one, but
yeah, no worries.
It's always for me, a lot of visionary entrepreneurs. At the end, they're like, oh, I should have said this, and they don't feel it's appropriate. So it's just my last moment to throw something out. But honestly, John, it was a real pleasure. I could say sincerely our time went by too quickly. Thank you for being a guest on the show.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. Great conversation. Thank you.